Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Programming Knowledge, and this is a video on how to create user login in PHP. And this is related to the previous video series on how to create user registration form. So in that tutorial we have discussed and learned how to create user registration form, and we define its database. So we're gonna be using the same database. So the database name is user accounts, and it has a table name users, and the users has ID, first name, last name, email, phone number, and password. So the ID is auto increment, and it has a size of 11. The first name is varchar or varchar with 100 as the length. Last name the same, length and the same type, email the same also. Phone number we have the varchar varchar 50 as length, and password the same 50 as length. So as I've said, we're gonna be using the same database. So you can go ahead and create your own database with user accounts and then users table. Okay, and then all these attributes: ID, first name, last name, email, phone number, and password. So we'll be learning how to create this particular login page, and we're gonna be using the email and password for our login credentials, and I will be showing you all the steps so that we could get up and running with this login page. So for now, let's create our new project. So go to your localhost directory and create a new folder, and let's name it user login. Okay, so we'll be defining few things or few files here. So we have the first file will be login.php, and then the second one will be config.php, and we also have the uh, index.php, and also one for logout.php. Okay, and we'll be placing our images in img folder and css into css folder. So open up login.php and let's define the HTML structure for this one. So we have basic structure of our login.php, and for the title, let's say programming knowledge. Okay, we need to include Bootstrap, jQuery, and Font Awesome in our project, because we're going to be using all those libraries to beautify our HTML structure. Because for now, if you try to visit our page, it's empty. So let's go back to our browser and search for the Bootstrap CDN, also jQuery CDN, and also Font Awesome. Okay, click on this first link for Bootstrap CDN. So we have different files that we have different files that can be included in our project. So we have the complete CSS. So click to copy, and let's go back to our login.php. So link, and of course paste the link that we have copied from the Bootstrap CDN page. Okay, and go back to our browser again. We need to include the Bootstrap minified.css. Click to copy and go back again to our login.php. We need to Make sure to include this at the bottom or before the closing body tag. And then for the src, paste the code that we have from the Bootstrap CDN page. Again, let's go back to our browser and let's click on this jQuery CDN, and for now let's use this jQuery 3 point something version and click on this minified and copy this to clipboard and go back to our code and then uh, paste it above the bootstrap that uh, mean that JavaScript. Okay, so let's just make sure to properly format our code. And the next one will be the font awesome. Okay, click on the font awesome link, the first one, and then start using free. So we have here the link that we could include in our page. So just click on this button, okay, and go back to our code and make sure to uh, include this below the bootstrap main.css. Okay, and we need to define a container here. So div with the class container, and of course uh, another class for its height as 100%. This is specific for Bootstrap Styles, and another div with the class dflex with another class justify content center, and of course again the h100, and another div with the class of user underscore card, and another div flex again with justify content center class, div flex and then justify content center, and inside here will be the logo for our login page, as you can see in our sample page here. So we have here the logo. So we will define the logo inside this div. So that will be inside another div, which is with the class of brand underscore logo container, and we will define our image here for the logo, and let's add a class for our logo, which is brand logo, and alt text will be programming knowledge logo. Okay, and for our logo I have created a very artistic logo. I have summoned my creative abilities to create this very awesome logo for our login page. So you could create your own logo. Just make sure to make it circle so it will fit in our login form. So go ahead, copy and paste your logo into our img folder in our project. Okay. So make sure to paste this logo or your logo inside this img folder. And for the source of our image, let's type in img, and of course the file name of our logo, which is for my case img/logo.png. And so let's create a new CSS file so that we could target this class and also this class, and we will define styles for this. So link, and for our reference it will be CSS and styles.css. Okay, so we have to create this style.css inside our CSS folder. So I create my new CSS file and save it inside the CSS folder. This will be styles.css, and let's target the body and HTML. So this will be margin 0, padding is 0, height will be 100%, and background color it will be 63 ABC, and this should be tagged as important. Okay, and another for the user card, and also the brand logo container, and another one for the brand logo. Okay, to save us from time, I'll just paste in the rules that applies to this classes, and you can pause the video and copy all the classes that or the rules that I'll be pasting in here. So we have defined the height for our user card as 400, the width will be 350 pixels, margin top auto, margin bottom auto, background will be F39C12, position relative, display flex, justify content center, flex direction column, and so on. So all you have to do is pause the video if you want to copy all these styles applied to this user card class. And for the brand underscore logo container, we have the position as absolute, height will be 170 px, and also the width. Top will be negative 75 px, border radius 50%, background will be 60 A3BC, and padding will be 10 pixels, text align center, and for our logo will be 150 px or pixels, and width as 150 pixels also. Border radius as 50%, and border will be 2 pixels solid and white. So we'll try to save and preview our page, save our style.css, and make sure also to save your login.php and go back to our browser and reload. So I think the CSS rules are working. So in this tutorial, we'll continue working on with this login form, and we will be adding different inputs. So input for our username and input for our password. So let's go ahead and open up our login.php code. So let's pick up where we left off. So this is where we ended last time. We added our own logo for our sign-in form, and let's go ahead add another div for this with the class dflex, and let's add another class which is justify content center. We'll be adding another one which is form container, and we will add also styles for this form container later on. Okay, so inside this div, let's define our form, and of course inside this form let's define all the inputs. So first let's create a div with input group append, and with a span class of input group text. Inside this, we'll be adding an icon which we will be using font awesome. So I, and then with class FAS and then FA user, and right after this div, let's add our input with the type text. Name will be username, and the ID will be, of course, username, and also add class to this, which is form control, then input user, and this will be a required field. And before we forget, let's group this one into another div. So div input group, okay, and close this div here. Add class to this, which is md3. This is mainly related to Bootstrap. This md3. This is for the spacing of our division or div. Okay, so we'll just copy the this input group for our password also. So input group, this will be for the password of our user. So the name will be password, the ID password, and also instead of input user, it should be input pass. And let's just change this into 2. And let's add another form group. So div with the class form group. Okay, and then another div. This will hold the remember me button, if you're familiar with that. Custom checkbox. Okay, one sec. Custom checkbox, yes. So inside here, let's type in the input type, which is the checkbox, of course, and for the name, it will be, or let's not add a name to this, but we could, anyway, let's just add the name. So remember me, and the class will be custom control input, and with the ID custom control inline, and let's just add label. So with the class custom control label, and inside here let's just type in remember me, and of course this will be for our custom control inline, which is this input checkbox. So let's now add the button for our sign in. So after this div, which is with the class form container, let's add another one, which is with the class deflex, and let's add another class for this, justify content content center and empty-3, and let's just add class or custom class for this login container, and Let's add another element, which is the button itself. So with the type button, and with the name will be button, and ID is login. Let's add class to this, which is btn, and then custom class login btn, and the value or the displayed text will be login. Okay, so the next step is to add the sign up button also, or link. You could, this is optional, but for now let's just add this to our form. empty dash 4 class empty dash 4, and inside this div let's define another div with class deflex, justify content center, and another custom class which is links. And inside this div, let's just say don't have an account, so class mo2, and the text would be sign up. So as I've said, this is only optional. If you want to implement this sign up, you could put in the link. Say for example, the link will be, for example, registration.php. So you could put the link here, and another div for forget password, the text, and justify content center. Inside this div, let's just define a link to reset the password. So forgot your password, something like that. So now that we have added all the elements to our form, let's try to preview our page and see if it looks good in our browser. So save our file, login.php, and go back to our browser. Navigate to localhost, and of course user login, and the page that we're concerned with is the login.php. So we have here the newly added elements. We have the input, remember me option, and we have the links for sign up and forget password. So as we can see, they're not set yet, or they're not looking good yet. So we need to customize the CSS for our elements. So let's go back to our file. Okay, so one thing that I noticed earlier is they have the same icon, which is the user, font awesome user. So instead of user for our password, let's just type in the key. So let's try that. Save our file and go back to our browser and refresh. So instead of the user icon, this will be the newly added icon, which is the key that signifies our password. Okay, so let's just change this into type password. Instead of text, let's say password. Okay, now let's go to our styles.css. We have defined different or few classes here that we need to target in our CSS to make sure that our login form looks good. Again, you can pause the video and try to copy all the CSS styles that we're going to define here. So number one will be the form container with margin top 100 px or 100 pixels. The login PTN will be with 100%. Background will be C0392B and tag this as important. Color will be white and this will be important. So another one will be login PDN focus. Box shadow will be none and tag this as important as well. And the outline will be 0px and important as well. The login container, we have padding 0 to rem and input group text. So background is C0392B. Important color will be white and border will be 0 and this will be important as well. Border radius 0.25 rem 0.25 rem and this will be important as well. And then input user, input pass, this is for our inputs in our login form for username and password. So focus, so box shadow will be none and this will be important as well. And outline will be 0px. And the last one will be custom checkbox with custom input or control input and check, then custom control, then label. Before, this will be background color. Background color will be also the C0392B. Tag this as important as well. So save our style.css and go back to our browser and refresh the page. So as you can see, we now have a nice looking login form. So in the previous tutorial, we have added the elements and also added the styles of this login form. So now let's do the quick fix for this login button, extending way beyond the user and password elements. So let's go back to our login.php code. Okay, so here in our code, I think we have mistyped the class for login container. So instead of dash, let's make it an underscore. So it would reflect, or it will be the same with the login container that we have defined in our styles.css. So go ahead, save your file, login.php, and go back to our browser and refresh. So as you can see, the login button is now aligned with the two elements or the username and password elements at the top. So let's continue working on with this login form and work with our actual logic to allow the user to log in this particular login form. So before going any further, let's try to move this form or the end form tag. So we would include the login button. So at the end of our code, just before or right before the end body tag, let's add another script to work with our login logic. So inside here, let's define the onload function of the jQuery. Okay, let's try it first if it's working or not. So alert. So save our file login.php and go back to our browser. Refresh the page and we have the alert that's saying alert. So next, let's try to select our button. So our button has the class login. So if this button is clicked, we will do some logic inside this function. So let's try this first and let's try to see if this is working or not. So log in that PHP, save and go back to our browser, refresh, and let's try to click on this login button. So it's working. Okay, so let's remove this and let's define a new variable here which is valid. Let's just check if the validity of our forms is true. So if the form is valid, let's get the value of our username. Okay, so target our username, which is with the ID username, and get the value. The same thing with our password. So the same with password ID. So the name of this variable will also be password. And let's prevent the submission of this form because we're gonna be doing the submission by using the AJAX call to a JS login.php file. So this part right here, let's define the AJAX call. Okay, so the type will be post. Okay, and the URL will be JS login.php, and the data of course will be our username and password. Okay, so username and then pass in the value username and password and the value password. So if this is successful, let's display alert first, success, and if it's not a success, of course, let's define also our display alert. This will be errors, or there were errors while doing the operation. Let's just change this later on. Okay, save our file and go to jslogin.php. Let's just try to echo something here. So hello from jslogin.php. Okay, save jslogin.php and go back to our browser, refresh, and click on this login button. So I think we have an error, so let's try to troubleshoot. So accordingly, type error E prevent default is not a function. Let's try to troubleshoot the problem. So accordingly, E prevent that default is not a function because we missed the T letter there. So save login.php and go back to our browser again, refresh, and click on the login button. So accordingly it was a success. The next step is we're going to work with our config.php to actually connect our code to database or MySQL database. So config that PHP. Let's open the PHP tag here and define few variables so that we could connect to our database. So the user for my case is root, the password is empty, and the database name, as we have defined earlier, is the user accounts. Okay, let us connect to our database with the PDO. So inside here, let's type in MySQL host equals localhost, and our DB name will be equals the DB name, the variable that we have defined at the top, semicolon, and the character set for this will be UTF-8, and of course we need to pass in the user and the password. Yes, and let's just set a single attribute for this video object. Set attribute will be for video attribute, error mode, and of course video colon and error mode will be to return exception whenever there's an error. Okay, so once we have that, we could include this to our JS login.php. So here we could type in require once the config.php, and let's try to use our video object. So select all from users for now, and define a statement. It's the empty select, of course using the video object, prepare, and of course the SQL. So the result will be select and then execute, and let's just pass in an empty array, and if result yes, echo success. Okay, else there were errors while connecting to database. Okay, so semicolon, and let's go back to our login.php. So instead of success, let's alert the data coming from the JS login.php. So login.php, save, and go back to our browser, refresh, and type in something and click on login. So we have an error there. Accordingly, undefined class constant error mode, because we have mistyped this error mode exception. So instead of error mode with all the letters typed in, so let's just make it ERR mode. So save the config.php file and refresh our page, and click on the login button. So hello from JS login.php. So accordingly, it was a success. So in our JS login.php file, instead of success, so let's define a new variable that will hold all the data coming from the database. So fetch, and then video fetch associative array, and then let's just var dump the user variable for now and save the file. Go back to our browser, refresh the page, and type in some values and click on login. So we have the record with the first name Jane and the last name Doe with janedoe@gmail.com as the email, and phone number is there also. Password is Jane Doe, so it's working. Okay, so instead of selecting all users, we need to filter out with the username and password, but we're going to use the email as the username for now, and the password equals limit 1. So username, this will be the values coming from our login form. Post, which is username, and the same with our password. Let's just pass in the password. Okay, password. So instead of passing an empty array, let's pass in the username and the password, and define an if statement. Statement or stmt select row count is greater than 0, meaning we have a success. We found the user in our database. Else, there's no user for that combo or something. Combo, and close our statement. Instead of success, let's just echo a value 1, and we'll check here in our login.php if the value is 1, if the response is with the value 1. So we need to trim the data coming from our JS login.php, and let's check if it is equal to 1, and let's redirect our user, set timeout window that location that href equals the index with double quote index.php, and set the delay for about 2 seconds. Okay, save our login.php, and let's go back to our JS login.php. So we have here line number 4, echo hello from JS login.php. We need to remove this. So save JS login.php and go back to our browser. Refresh. So for example, you have janedoe@gmail.com in your database, and you just need to type in the password and then click on this login button. So we have the value coming from our JS login.php as number 1. It signifies that we found a user in our database with the combination that we entered in the field username and the password. So okay, and wait for a few seconds. So it redirected to our index.php. But for now, if we try to click on this back button, we could see again the login.php form, which means that we need to set the session so that every time we try to log in with our username and password, if we are authenticated, then we could stay for that particular page, or we could stay in that index.php instead of login.php every time. So in our JS login.php, we need to set the session or start the session. So session and then start, And inside this statement, we need to set our session variable, and let's pass in our index, which will be user login, and then let's uh, pass in the user values, which is the array coming from our database, or the associative array we got from our database. So save this, and inside the login.php we need to check at the top. So let's open up the PHP here and close, and let's check if the session with session user login is set, and add header with location index.php. Save, and let's copy and paste this one, so in our index.php we could also check if the session user login is not set. Redirect to login.php. So we'll just add a element here, welcome to index. Save index.php and go back to your browser, refresh, and type in your username and password. Click on login. So the user is found. Click on OK. So we're not redirected to index.php. That's because we need to add one line to our files. So inside login.php we need also to set the session or start the session, because we're using the session variable below, and make sure to copy and paste this also to index.php, because again we're using the session variable here. So index.php save, and login.php save. So refresh our page, we are automatically redirected to our index.php. We won't be able to go to our login.php file because the session is set. So it's checking if the session is set, then stay in index.php, otherwise go to login.php. There's one more thing that we need here. We need a link for us to log out in index.php. So let's go back to index.php. So we're just going to add the link here, and this should be index.php and logout equals to true, and type in logout. Okay, save. And here we need to check if the logout variable is set. So if is set get the logout, so we need to destroy the session. So session destroy and unset the session, redirect to our login.php. Okay, save our file index.php, and let's go back to our browser and refresh. So we have here the logout link, so let's click on this. We have successfully logged out from index.php. So we'll try to log in again in index.php by typing in our username and password using our email. So password and then login 1. So we're now at the index.php. Okay, so I think that's all there is to it in this tutorial. Thanks.